We're on Samach Gimel Bay 63b. We're at the Toner Rabbanon, about 4 lines into the wide lines toward the end of the line. Okay, so we're trying to prove what we saw yesterday. But let's just review some of the major terms. We're familiar with the term b'toyen tainus ganev, right? Toyen tainus ganev is a watchman who claims that the item was stolen. He's actually the thief. Similarly, there's toyen tainus ovad, same watchman who claims instead of claiming it was stolen, he claims it was lost. Again, he's the thief. Then we have a ganev atzmai, which is a term the Gemara will use. That's an actual thief, standard thief. Okay, and then so let's basically review where we were up to yesterday. The Mishnah Meruba, first Mishnah Meruba teaches that kefil is paid basically by any type of stolen object. You steal a chair, a table, an animal, kosher, not kosher, whether it's a kosher bird or non-kosher macaw, it doesn't make a difference. You're chayav kefil. For dalad v'hei, you have to steal either a cattle or a sheep. Okay. Now, not only is kefil paid by a thief, kefil is also paid by a toyen tainus ganev, but with the major caveat that he has to make an oath. So the guy claims the item was stolen, then he makes an oath that it was stolen, and then it turns out he's the thief. He has to make the oath. Not only does he have to pay, he has to pay double. Another point we saw yesterday, which is worthwhile repeating, is that if you lie on an oath and you admit to lying, then this is true of basically every single oath. It's also very similarly true if you steal from Hektish and admit to it. You pay Karen Chaimish Osham.
Where are we?
Principal Chaimish is 20%, and then Osham is a carbon sacrifice. Okay. So the Gemara wants to know, how do we know that toyen tainus ganev does pay? Toyen tainus ganev has to pay kefil. Toyen tainus ovad does not need to pay kefil. If the watchman claims it was stolen, yes, kefil. He says it was lost, no kefil. Moreover, even if he says it was stolen, you only pay kefil after a shvuah. This next Gemara is quite the fun ride, and we're not done for today. We'll continue on Shabbos as well. Okay. I wasn't. This is undoubtedly probably the highest Gemara. Among the hardest Gemaras, if not the hardest Gemara. Okay, the Toner Rabbanon. Again, so you have 3 psukim. If you have the fancy Gemara, it's worthwhile to look on the side of the page. 3 psukim. Again, the first pasuk was Kayitin Ishar Eo Kesef Kelam Lishmar V'Gunam Beiseish. So he gave a watchman Kesef Kelam, vessels or money. The Gunav in Beis Ish, it was stolen, and Mimotze Aganav, you find the thief, Yishalom Shnayim, presumably the thief pays twice. He makes a double payment. Careful. Or 5 lines into the wide lines. Toward the top of the page, the Toner Rabbanon would be the first word. Minayim Milu, the Toner Rabbanon. Charles, what's the article footnote there?
Just going to ask what page we're on.
We're on 63b. Sorry.
Okay, that would help. Okay, I can't tell you, it'll be a while. But I'll mute anyway.
Okay. Okay, so that's the first verse. The second verse is Im lo yimotze ganev, if you didn't find the thief, Yishalom Shnayim, you pay twice, double payments. I'm sorry, what am I saying? Sorry. Im lo yimotze ganev, nikr bal bayis, you make an oath, make a shvuah. And finally, the third verse says, I'll call dvar pesha, if there's any type of negligence, I'll shor, chamor, I'll sell, salma, 4 specifics, right? Shor, chamor, says salma. Ox, donkey, sheep, clothes. I'll call aveda on any lost object. You pay kefil. So let's explain. If you find the thief. What does it mean if you find the thief? You find out that he actually is the thief. It's not referring to an actual thief. It's referring to a Tayin Tainus Ganav. You're telling me the verse is referring to somebody who himself is a thief. Maybe it means the actual thief. You found the real thief. When the verse states, if you don't find the thief, and he makes an oath, and that second part of the verse we'll soon see is talking about Tayin Tainus Ganav, meaning you didn't find the thief. Why not? Because the guy himself is the thief. Okay, so therefore, it must be the first verse is also talking about Tayin Tainus Ganav, and we'll explain more in a moment. Tanya Idach, the next Bryce says, if you find the thief, what does that mean? Beganav Atzma. It means the actual thief. You're telling me it means the actual thief. Or maybe it means a thief. It means that the watchman is claiming that it was stolen, but really he's the thief. When the verse states, if you don't find the thief, he makes an oath, that's actually a reference to him lying under oath. He's actually the thief. So therefore, Tayin Tainus Ganav Amar. So the Torah already spoke about Tayin Tainus Ganav. Hamani Mekayim Mimatzeh Ganav, Beganav Atzma Kosim Daber. When the Torah says you actually find the thief, what's it referring to? It's referring to Tayin Tainus Ganav. I'm sorry. Because not finding the thief is talking about where the guy himself stole it. So therefore, the Torah talks about finding the thief. It must talk about a different scenario. The thief himself. You actually found the thief. Okay, so let's examine this for a little bit. When the verse states, if you don't find the Ganef, the thief, that is a reference to Tayin Tainus Ganav. My mashma. How do you see that? Rava explains. The verse states as follows: meaning that, like he said, that it was stolen. Rather, Ganav. Haganav is that he is the thief. El shehu atzmi ganvai. So then you make an oath, and the next verse says, for any type of guilt and negligence, you pay twice. Yishalom shnayim. That means that is referring back to the scenario where he claims it was stolen, and it wasn't stolen. He himself is the thief. Okay, and we know the b'shvua. How do we know that you only get Tayin Tainus Ganav if you made an oath? The Tanya, the Brisa says, "V'nikra balabayit el ha'elihim." The owner approaches the court. Meaning the owner over here, not the owner of the item, the owner, the watchman. The watchman approaches the court l'shvua to make an oath. Ata emel l'shvua, you tell me he approaches the court to make a shvua, make an oath. Ayeni el din. Maybe it means to make it, for judgment that he should have to pay. So Gemara says, "Nemer shlichus yad lamata, v'nemer shlichus yad lamala, malahal b'shvua, afkan l'shvua." Okay. In the other scenario of Shomrim, where the guy claims unforeseen circumstances, the Torah says, "Oh, you're shalach yad b'pikadon. You touched the pikadon. You were a watchman and it disappeared. Make an oath." This is effectively the same circumstances. So therefore, make an oath as well. Okay, and therefore, because the verse is referring to Tayin Tainus Ganav and it says make an oath, so therefore we know that Tayin Tainus Ganav is only after you made an oath. Okay, according to the opinion that says one verse is referring to an actual thief, and the other verse is talking about a virtual thief, right? He claims the item was stolen, but he himself really has it. So therefore, that's why we need two separate verses, right? One verse tells me an actual thief, the other verse tells me somebody who claims to be a thief. Elamanda Amar Travaya B'Toyin Tanis Ganev. But according to the opinion that says both verses are talking about a guy who claims to steal, who claims it was stolen and he is the thief. Shrei Kroy Lamali. Why do I need two verses to give me effectively the same scenario? It basically, the Mishnah basically says you pay in the same scenario you pay kefil, and it said the verses, and it repeats itself. It says it twice. So the Gemara says Amri Chad Lemuditayin. It's Avad. 1 second. Okay. Amri Chad Lemuditayin. It's Avad. Okay, so according to this explanation, it's very simple. The reason why Torah is repeating itself is as follows. Let's say a Shem Rechina, right? What's he exempt for? Basically everything. He's only not exempt if he's negligent. Unpaid watchman, right? If you go with a hammer and you smash up my car, then you're liable, right? Moreover, I don't know, maybe if you left the doors wide open at nighttime and a robber came in and wrecked it, maybe you're liable for that too. But if you left it in your driveway and it was locked and it was stolen, right? Routine occurrence here. So yeah, you're not liable. All you need to do is make an oath. Okay. Now, how many different arguments could you make to make an oath? Effectively, you could say it was lost. You could say it was stolen. You could say unforeseen circumstances happened. Any of those work. Now, with the law of Tayin Tainus Ganev arguing it was stolen, it's only one of those options. That one of a few options available to a Shem Rechinim, an unpaid watchman, who's basically only liable for negligence. If that's the case, maybe all of them have the same rule. In other words, if you make up a story and you lie, you pay twice. So that's how the Torah repeats itself. In other words, when you repeat the same law twice, what you're saying is this law is limited to this category. Similar concept would be like Shnei Ksuvim Habam Ke'echad Ein Melamdim. Right? If the Torah repeats a new concept twice, that means that it's applicable only to where it's stated. This is not something that's applicable to anything, as long as it's somewhat comparable. So therefore, the Torah says Tayin Tainus Ganev, it's exclusive to Geneva, to robbery. If you claim the item was lost and you actually are the robber, you don't pay kefil. There's no kefil. Kefil is only when you say it was stolen and you're the thief. Okay, now let's just summarize here briefly. We have two opinions. One opinion is the verse repeats Tayin Tainus Ganev twice. The other opinion is the verse talks about a regular thief and a Tayin Tainus Ganev. Together? Okay, now let's just summarize the order of the Gemara that we're in. Okay, why did we bring this whole debate in the first place? So we began the day by looking for a source for two key ideas. Key idea number one, which we clearly addressed now, was that the requirement that in order to be chayav kefil for Tayin Tainus Ganev, you must make a shvuah. And at this point, I think it's clear why you need to make a shvuah, right? Because when the Torah talks about Tayin Tainus Ganev, it says you made a shvuah. That's how we know it. Clear? Okay. Good. Point number two was that it is it is exclusively Tayin Tainus Ganev. If you say Tayin Tainus Avad, then there's no kefil. Now we've explained according to one of the two brises why that makes sense. If both scenarios are Tayin Tainus Ganev, so one of the extra one tells me it's a limitation. If you say it was lost, there's no Tayin Tainus Ganev. Now, according to the other opinion that says one is talking about a real thief, the other one is talking about the virtual thief, Tayin Tainus Ganev, then how do we know, back to the original question, how do we know Tayin Tainus Avad does not pay kefil? Together? Okay. 1 second. Okay. So one is talking about a standard thief, one is talking about a virtual thief. So you don't have an extra repetition that would limit the applicability of Tayin Tainus Ganev specifically to the argument of stealing, as opposed to being the watchman saying the item was lost. So minole, how do we know that if you claim the item is lost and you're actually the thief, that you are exempt from kefil. So the Gemara says, Meganev Haganev. From the fact when the Torah refers to Toyin Tainis Ganev, it says Lo Yimotzi Haganev. Ha is the hey there is the capital THE, right? The thief, capital trademark, right? All quotations, right? It meaning like it's the thief, not somebody who says it was Avad. Not someone says it was lost. That's not sufficient. He has to be actually be claiming he was a thief and he himself is a thief. Okay, Lamanda Amr Travaya B'Toyin Tainis Ganev, according to the opinion that says that both scenarios are Toyin Tainis Ganev, Demiat Toyin Tainis Avad. So he already limits the scenario of where the guy claims it was lost as opposed to stolen. So Ganev Haganev my Darishbay. So why does the Torah need to take Ganev, the thief, and put it in all caps with a capital THE before it? The thief. Why is that necessary? So my Darishbay, Amar Lach, so he would respond, he needs it for the opinion of Rabbi Barabba in the name of Rabbi Yehudah. Amar Rabbi Barabba, Amar Rabbi Yehudah, Atoyin Tainis Ganev Bikoden, Misham Tashlum Mikefel. Somebody claims to be somebody claims the item was stolen. Turns out he's the robber. He pays kefil. Moreover, if he sells it or he slaughters it in case of an ox or cattle, cattle or sheep. 1 second. Yeah. So in other words, any type of robber, when you claim that it was stolen and you're the thief, you have the full halacha of being a robber, both with regard to kefil and with regard to dalad v'hei. Okay, so what about the opinion that disagrees? The opinion that says one is a regular thief, one's a virtual thief. The high ganav, and the ganav, haganav, the hay in front of ganav, right, is the capital T. The thief refers to limiting the argument of the shomer specifically to thievery if you want him to pay kefil. So then, how does he know this law of Rav Chia Barabba the name of Rabbi Yehudah? 1 second. The Rav Chia Barabba Minali Amar Lach. He says Hekeshu the Ein Meshivin Al Hekesha. Okay, in other words, Torah here is comparing Toyin Tainis Ganev to a regular Ganev, and that comparison it means effectively that the guy is a regular thief. If he's a regular thief, of course he has the laws of dalad v'hei, just like a regular thief. What about the fact that there are some differences? It's true, but a hekesh, which is a accepted tradition of a comparison between two categories, you can't. The fact that they're slightly different from each other is not a reason why they're not comparable. That's what it means for in meshivin alakesha. Okay. According to the opinion that says one verse is for regular thievery, the other one is for Toyin Tainis Ganev, so it makes sense. According to the opinion that both verses refer to Toyin Tainis Ganev, how do we know that a regular thief pays kefil no matter what he steals? So now I know Toyin Tainis Ganev, I know pays kefil. Why? Because the Torah says 4 categories: al shor, al chamor, al seh, al salma, al kol aveda. Right? That tells me basically pay kefil for everything. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Okay. And that verse presumably is referencing both Tainis Ganev and an actual thief, because the verses preceding it are referring to both categories. One verse talks about an actual thief, one talks about a virtual thief. And the Torah puts all these categories for kefil. Right? Shor chamor says salma kol aveda. However, Elamanda Amar Travay B'Toyin Tainis Ganev Atzmai Tainis Ganev, according to the opinion that says both verses. In other words, the category of shomrim does not refer to an actual thief. So if that's the case, how does he know that every kefil pays How does he know that every kefil is paid no matter what is stolen on every type of stolen object? Because the verse here is only referring to Tayin Tainis Ganev. The verse references Tayin Tainis Ganev, and only Tayin Tainis Ganev. And it says Tayin Tainis Ganev, any type of object you are watching. Doesn't make a difference. Shar Chamor says Salma Kol Aveda, you're chayav for it all. You'll pay kefil on everything. Fine. And no Tayin Tainis Ganev, bad boy, he pays kefil for everything. But what about an actual thief? How do I know he pays kefil on everything? Okay. Next Gemara is even harder than everything else you've seen till now. That says something. Okay, I'm going to start by giving a few introductions here, which might, depending on how far we get to today, I don't know how far we'll get. Hopefully, at least we'll finish now with Aleph and Aleph. I'm not even sure about that. We'll go through a few general rules. If you say Rabbi Shmuel every day, we have the general rules of Rabbi Shmuel, right? The 13 hermeneutic principles. Just important to give some context here, because it'll be very important as we turn the page to Samach Daled Amud Beis to really understand the next brisa that comes up. This is the brisa of Talmud Bechizkiah. Okay. Let's see another two lines, and we'll give the introduction. Okay. If you'll say Leisi b'kal v'chaymer mitoyin tainis ganev, let's say you'll try to compare a regular thief to toyin tainis ganev. There's a problem with this. In other words, you'll say that every Tayin Tainis Ganev is like a regular thief. In truth, he's even less than a regular. A regular thief is like super bad. Tayin Tainis Ganev is like little bad, right? So if little bad guy pays kefil, for sure, super bad guy pays kefil. Fair enough?
Yeah.
The answer is yeah, fine. But little bad guy, Tayin Tainis Ganev, he only pays kefil when? With a shvuah. So that's your only source. You want to compare big bad guy to little bad guy, fine, agreed. But you have the same rules as the small bad guy, which is Tayin Tainis Ganev. Just like he will only pay kefil with the shvuah, you should have to say that the big bad guy, which is the regular thief, also has to make a shvuah. But that's not the case. He doesn't have to make a shvuah. So what is the source that a regular Ganev pays kefil without a shvuah? Okay, so now we got Talmud Bechizkiah. So let's just explain a little bit of background. The first few principles, very important. We have klal uprat, prat uklal, and klal uprat uklal. Let's go through them. Klal uprat, a general statement followed by a specific. In that case, we say ein bechlal elamasha beprat. That means that the entire general statement includes no more than the specific category. So if I say, for example, there's a new study that a car will get into an accident, and it refers to Kia Rios, the most deadly car in America. Okay, then the car is a very general statement, but the very specific one is the Kia Rio, right? And therefore, it's ein b'chlal masher prat. The whole study only refers to this Kia Rio.
So the tongue is almost irrelevant.
Correct. The cloud, exactly. The klal is irrelevant. Now we have another rule called prat uklal, where the specific came first, and then we've expanded the category. So now we say, no. What happens? Nasa klal moisif al haprat. The klal basically says that the prat was only an example of the general rule. It's an example of the general rule, but it's not a limitation. It's a wide category. Okay? And now we have the third rule, which is klal uprat uklal. We have general, specific, general. Okay, and we'll see that there are a few variations in this. Okay, another example is a similar idea would be what happens if you have two general statements followed by specific statements. So in this case, you'd have klal, and prat. We'll get to it. Okay, now the klal uprat uklal, we've spoken about it at length. What is klal uprat uklal? General, specific, general. So let's review. If it would have just said general, specific, what does that mean? Specific only. If it would have said specific, general, what is that? What?
General.
Then it's general. It's a general statements. Okay, now, give me a second, make sure I have this right. Okay, so now let's try to take this apart. Take this apart. I hope I don't make any mistakes here. That will be a total disaster. Okay. Klal prat, you only have the prat, right? Prat to klal, you only have the klal. Okay, so now let's imagine klal prat to klal. The first klal, if you took away the first klal, what do you have? Pause. Let's go first. Klal prat to klal. What do we do? So we have this rule that we take all the pratim, we abstract the principle from it. Okay. Typically a common denominator, but not necessarily. So in other words, right? So Torah gives a bunch of examples. Let's say Meiser is a good one. You have you can take your Meiser money, you can buy wine, beer, or cattle or meat, right?
Basically anything edible.
Oh, so we say, well, not everything edible. It has to have reproduction and involve the ground, right? Reproduction involve the ground. In other words, mushrooms and fish are excluded, and salt and water. Okay. In other words, we're taking the specifics, we're abstracting the principle. We're saying this is a limitation. Okay. So it's not a full limitation, it's a partial limitation. It's an abstraction of the specifics. Right?
Okay.
Now, if you have a klal, a prat to klal, if you drop the first klal, what happens? If you drop the first klal, you get nothing. You have an expansive statement because you're left with the prat to klal.
Oh.
So actually, the first klal in a klal, a prat to klal is a limiting factor. Right? Now, take this notice, because without it, you have everything. You have no limitation at all. Basically, any edible item. Right? In the case of Meiser. Now, let's go back. Let's say you drop the second klal. So what are you left with? Klal of prat, only specifics. You'd have to buy meat, wine, and beer. That's it. It's a great deal, right? Who cares? Anyway.
No.
Yeah. Okay, now, so therefore, when the second klal comes up, what is that type of klal doing? It's an expansive klal. It's, right? Which is sort of counterintuitive, because when you have only a klal of prat, when you have a klal of prat, you only have the prat. When you have a prat to klal, you only have the klal. You have what's second, basically. So now, therefore, in a klal of prat to klal, the first klal is a limiting factor. The second klal is a widening factor. It's an opening factor. Together? Okay. Now let's begin with Tana de Bechizkiah. Okay, so the Gemara says Nafklei mitana de Bechizkiah. Again, so what are we looking for here? What's the Holy Grail, right? What are we looking for? What are we going out to find? The answer is what we're looking for is, how do we know that a regular ganev pays kefil without any conditions? You're a big thief, regular thief, you steal, you have to pay back double. How do we know that? The Tana de Bechizkiah, Yomer Shor Gneva Vakol B'Chlalos. If you have it's interesting though, the very new ways of how the Gemaras have this. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's and you have the fancy Gemaras. It's on the side of the page, the fourth verse. This has nothing to do with Shomer. If you have a thief, you have himotze timotze. Again, im himotze timotze. If himotze you find, timotze it is found. What do you think those are, by the way? There's a general statements and specific statements. Im himotze timotze. If it is found, if you find it, or if it is found. Do those sound like general statements, or do those sound like specific statements?
Find it.
So it sounds like two general statements, one after another.
Oh.
Okay, we'll get to that probably tomorrow at this point. Okay. So then what do you find? Hagneva, the stolen object. The stolen object, does that sound general? Does that sound specific? Not quite, still general, because we're talking about a robber already. We're talking about a robber.
Oh.
That's the verse before. I should have. Well, now I got the specifics. These are very specific. Mishar, from an ox. Okay, that's fairly specific. Ad chamor, to a donkey. Ad seh, to a sheep. Those are clearly specific. Okay. Now we have something that's sort of in between, which is chayim. These animals are alive. Right? Which is sort of specific, but it's also general, because it refers to any live animal.
It's wider than the previous.
Exactly. So shnayim mishalom, you have to pay double. Okay, so this is the you can already see where we're going here and why this is very complicated. Okay, Yomer Shor Ugneva. Let the verse just say an ox and a stolen object. So notice here, I'll have to point this out now. I'll bring it up in a second in more detail. That sure, the actual verse says im himotze timotze. We'll talk about that probably tomorrow at this point. Okay, hageneva, the stolen object. Mishor, if it's an ox, se chamor chayim. So geneva is actually the first note in the verse. So in Talmud Bechizki here actually switches it. He says Yomer shor gneva. Let it just say an ox and a stolen object. It's actually gneva and shor, which would be the correct way to say this, because gneva is first in the verse. We'll get to that. Hopefully soon. About kol b'chlal, and everything is included in the category. Okay, ilukach. If that was the, so in other words, we'd have a klal prat klal. We'd have gneva, shor, chayim. If that's the case, ilukach yisi aimer. No. Maha prat mefurish karov v'gam mizbech. It's a sacrificial animal. Av kol karov v'gam mizbech. I would say that you'd only pay kefil on a sacrificially eligible carbon animal. Mayesh l'cholahavi. So that would the only thing be included. So now what are you going to say to me? Why does the Torah repeat a second group of a sheep? It says also sacrificial animal. Why is it necessary to repeat it? So sacrificial animals are already listed. So clearly that's not the common denominator category. Hamani Mekayim Geneva. So what does the wider category tell me to include? Cold over. Any item. So in other words, it can't just be a sacrificial animal, because there are two examples of sacrificial animals. So clearly the abstracting principle is really any stolen item. We'll continue, we'll explain. Yomer shor, let the verse just say shor and se ugneva, by kol b'chlal. An ox, a sheep, and a stolen object. Okay, and everything is included. That's what we just said. Okay, so that's the resolution. Gemara says, well, that doesn't really resolve the problem. Why? Because ilukach, if that's the case, he says, these items feature a common denominator that they're eligible for the concept of b'chara, a firstborn status. So af kol davar kadosh b'chara. So therefore, Gneva says, okay, everything else that has b'chara. The problem with this is that mayesh l'cholahavi chamor. If that's the case, what would be included? A donkey, because donkey has b'chara. However, kishuaymer chamor, hare chamor omer. But the Torah already says chamor. So clearly that's not the principle to be abstracted, because if that was the case, there would be no need to give a third example of chamor. Okay, Hamani Mekayim Geneva. So why does the Torah say the category of stolen item? The Rab is called over to include any type of stolen item. Okay, if that's the case, then what are we saying? We're saying Yomer Shor v'Chamor Se Ugneva. It says an ox, a sheep, and a donkey, and a stolen object. We're saying all stolen objects are included. Hold on. If that's the case, and you see I would say, all these have a common denominator of being alive. Af kol balei chayim. So I would say that the category only includes living things. That's the expansiveness of the category. It's not just a donkey, a sheep, and an ox, and a cattle. It's really any type of living item. That's what we're including. Why are we saying we're including all things? We have a much tighter circle. It's all living things. Okay, hold on. If that's the case, what are we going to include? Balei chayim, living things. There's just a problem with that. Kishu oimer chayim, the verse concludes by saying chayim, living things. Well, that's already included. We already know that. So why is that given as another example? Hare chayim omer, hamani mekayim geneva, the rabbi is called over. So why does the Torah specify stolen items? The rabbi is called over to include all things. Okay. Effectively, Talmud Bechizki is saying kefil is paid on all things. Why? Because it's a separate verse where the pasuk says you steal anything. If you steal an ox, steal cattle, sheep, donkey, living things, chayim shnayim yishalem, you pay twice. Okay, and that includes all. That's a sort of like a klal prat klal, and includes everything. Okay, Omar Mara, let's go through the brayso. Yomer shor gneva. So, like I pointed out to you initially, the verse actually says Geneva and shor. A stolen item is the first item listed in the verse. Geneva, mi shor ad chamor. So why does Talmud Bechizki say shor and Geneva, an ox and a stolen item? It should actually be miksiv shor Geneva. It doesn't say that. It says Geneva v'shor hu d'chsev. It's the opposite order. It's a stolen item is first, and then a shor, an ox, is an example of a stolen item, is listed second. V'chitim, if you'll say ilu nemar kamar, if it would have said that. In other words, not that the verse actually says it, but the verse could have said that. Ilu nemar shor gneva, umimat samrit maha prat mefurish have a shor prat ugneva klal prat klal nasa klal moisef ala prat. Ves rabu kol mili. It can't be that Geneva is after Shor. Why? Because if Geneva is after Shor, which rule do we apply? Shor is first, that's a prat. Geneva, stolen item, that's a klal. Pratu klal, nasa klal moisef ala prat. And what do we say? The prat is just an example, but it's not a limitation at all. That's the case. So then everything is included, obviously. You don't need to give any pratu klal definitions here. It must be that Geneva is before Shor in order for it to be a klal pratu klal. Okay, Ela Siv Kamri, Geneva Vishor. Gemara says you're right. What he meant to say was in the order that it's actually written: Geneva, stolen item, and then Shor. So this way it would be a klal product klal. Okay, Mimatz is Amrit Hakol B'Chlal. Okay, so in other words, can you say that we're going to turn this into a klal product klal? Okay. In other words, so the Gemara attempts to say, just like the prat, the shor is an animal fit for sacrifice.
Mhm.
So too, all animals fit for sacrifice are included. There's just one problem. In other words, it says Geneva, then it says shor. Geneva is general, shor is specific. Okay, so now we put Geneva back into its position first. So Geneva and shor. That's a klal prat. What's the rule of klal prat? Ein b'chlal l'masha b'prat. Exclusively shor, nothing else. So how can we abstract the concept, which is sacrifice eligible? It's not a klal prat to klal, it's a klal prat. Ein b'chlal elamash b'prat. The Geneva is the klal, the prat is shor, there's nothing else inside of it. So how are you abstracting something? How like Geneva klal v'shor klal, shor prat, klal prat, ein b'chlal elamash b'prat. Shor in midyakloin aloi, specifically cattle, nothing else. So Gemara says no. Amarava Tana Achayim Kasamach. Tana de Bechizki is relying on the last item which I explained to you before, right? What is Chayim? Chayim is both a klal and a prat, right? It's pretty specific. It's living, but it's also far more general than different species like ox, donkey, sheep. So so we use it as a klal. So he didn't tell this to us, but we know that he's relying on the principle of klal prat to klal, using Chayim as the last klal. Together? Okay. And he's referring to the principle of klal prat to klal. So the Gemara says we just have one problem. The last klal, which is chayim, is not similar to the first klal, which is geneva. Right? Geneva is any stolen object, which literally means any stolen object. Whereas chayim, it's any animal, but it's still an animal. So they're not comparable. So the Gemara says they don't have to be comparable. Hatana de Rishmal, which I won't go into in too much depth. Hatana de Rishmal, who did Gehagav and Dorish Kloli Prati. Hatana de Rishmal, which we're not going to go into in specific. He says that the principle of klal prat klal still applies. And this is the question. Okay. If he might say timatze lomali. In other words, the question of Tana de Bechizki also includes another question, which we didn't address previously. Now we'll address it. I pointed out to you that the verse actually begins with himatze timatze. Himatze if it is found, and timatze it is discovered. Okay, that's the opening. Those are both general statements. So why does that have to be listed in the verse? Lomali yomer shor gneva v'chayim b'kol b'chlal. If it says shor gneva and chayim, everything's included. Ilu kacha yis yomer. If it would have just said Geneva Shor Chaim, I would say it has to be sacrificially eligible because the Shor is sacrificially eligible. Af kol kol gam is back. Mayash kol havi sek. Shomer seh hare seh omer. Hamani mekain Geneva. The rabbi is called over. Okay, well it already says seh. It says also sacrificial example. Why is it necessary to repeat a sacrificial example if we've already included that from Shor? So clearly that's not the abstracted category. So what is it? Okay. Yomer Geneva V'Shor V'Seh. Say Geneva, Shor, and Seh, and V'Chayim, which is the end of the verse. So you have a klal prat to klal. The pratim are Shor and Seh. That kol b'chol and everything is included. No, not quite. That can't be because I would say the abstracted category is not everything, every stolen item, but it is things that are eligible for the category of redemption of the firstborn. Well, if that's the abstracted category, that can't be it. Why? Because you'd include chamor in that category of it's eligible for b'chor. The problem is chamor is specified. So that can't be the abstracted category. The rabbi is called over. It must be including everything. So let the verse be as written. The rabbi is called over. Okay. Now, so basically, where we're leaving off, and we'll try to finish with this, is that, okay, so we've established that the general statement here cannot even be living items, living animals. Why? Because that's specified in the final klal. So therefore, it must be that the abstracted category is all stolen items. Now, if that's the case, so we have the klal part of the klal set up nicely, fine. But why does the Torah say himotzi timotzi? Additionally to this klal part of the klal, the Torah also gives another two klalim in the beginning of the verse. Why is that necessary? And the Gemara says, top of Samat al base, it's a good question. It's a good question. That's where we'll stop.